get you comfortable in your ring sling. I'm actually going to start with an unthreaded ring sling. Let's just go start to finish. I will also say, as we talked about a little bit, that not all fabric is made equally. So some ring slings are just harder to use because some companies use less expensive fabric that's not as soft or floppy, as we like to say. But let me just show you how to use a ring sling start to finish, and then we'll see if we can get you comfortable in what you have. So when you're threading, you want to make sure you don't have any twists in the fabric. So you can see nice spread right there. And I'm going to follow this seam all the way to the bottom of the ring sling. I'm going to pull it through the rings. Going to open those rings, bring it over, under, pull it through. And that is the first step of threading. All right. So before you put baby in, you're not ready. Look how big this is. This is way too big for a baby. All right. So let's make it smaller. One way I like to do that is called the elbow trick. I put my elbow in. You're going to tighten it around your pocket. Or excuse me, around your elbow. The pocket around your elbow. Anyway. All right. So we've made that pocket much smaller, which means less adjusting once your baby gets in. So you can see I start with my rings up here, nice and high. Gonna make sure that my fabric is spread out so you can see I've got my one seam here and I've got my other seam here. And if I pull, you'll see that it pulls this piece of fabric through. And then obviously it's pulling this one through. All right, I'm gonna make it a little bigger now. All right, so we talked about doing a hip carry, so let's do that. So when I do a hip carry, I kind of put baby in on my front, and then I spread the fabric up their back a little bit. Then what I like to do is I kind of scooch their body when they're already in the pocket. So you can see I'm gonna grab babe's body, bum. I have my hand on their bum, in case you can't see that here. Got my hand on their bum and I'm kind of just bringing them over to my hip. I just find that that's easier, and you can see my rings haven't moved. I think if you try and put them in on your hip, sometimes your rings will adjust this way and it's a lot harder. I like to get this top seam tightened first. So I'm gonna grab it, I'm gonna pull it over, take this slack out of the fabric and bring it over to the rings and pull it through. So you can see now that I've just taken all that slack and I've given my baby a nice support up here. And I'm gonna check the bottom seam. I'm actually going to grab the fabric from behind my back, kind of bring their butt into that fabric seat a little bit more by taking this seam right here. You can see it right here. And I'm kind of bringing it up towards their belly button. It doesn't have to touch their belly button, but that's kind of how I create that pocket and shove and like get their weight into it. Okay. Then I'm gonna do something similar here with their knees. See how I'm pulling all this slack towards the rings, and it's gonna tighten through. So I'm gonna tighten it here. It's kind of hard to see because I have the fabric in the way. There you go. So now, I'm sorry, your leg needs to go back down. I actually have a lot of excess fabric down here. So what I'm gonna do is pull it up their back. The reason we don't want a lot of excess fabric behind their knees is because it actually creates a pressure point and it can be uncomfortable for kids, and they'll try and straighten their leg to get out of the pocket, and we don't want that. So you want to get rid of all that excess fabric and just have the bare minimum that you need to make that pocket. So you can see I've got some slack here in the middle. I'm going to tighten it through here. And that is a hip carry. So you saw how when I tightened the fabric, I tightened it in what we call threes. So I tightened the top, the middle of the fabric, and the bottom of the fabric. And you can see how my rings did not move that entire demonstration. One thing I find that people do all the time, which can be really frustrating when you're trying to use your ring sling, let's say this is looser and you try and tighten it like this. It's gonna pull those rings this way. That's why I always say to start with a smaller pocket, less adjusting, right? And then to tighten in threes. So that top seam, middle of the fabric, and the bottom seam. That also gives you a little bit more control in the tightness, right? Like if you're just pulling all of this fabric, you're not able to control where you're tightening. So you're either gonna end up with more slack in one place or it's gonna be too tight in another. So you always wanna make sure, again, see how I'm kind of grabbing that slack, bringing it around towards the rings, feeding it through, tightening it. So I'm only tightening this one section to give my baby more support up here. So that's kind of my long video. I hope that's helpful. I do think you mentioned getting another ring sling might be ideal. It really depends. I don't know what you have now, but there are definitely great fabrics in the world. I know for us, we always make sure that our fabrics are soft right out of the box. which is really essential for ease of use. So, but definitely try again with what you have and see if we can get you comfortable. If you have any other questions, drop them below and we'd be happy to answer.